So hi, I'm Paul Seligson. I'm the author of English ID. I've been teaching for about 35 years now in countries all over the world, and I've produced about 35 English language teaching books with different titles, and I'm very happy to say that I'm still thoroughly enjoying teaching. It's a wonderful profession. Yeah, when we first came up with the idea of ID, there were lots of considerations, but what we really wanted to do was to try and produce something which would facilitate learning in Latin America, because English and Portuguese, Spanish are effectively sister languages. They all come primarily from Latin. And we figured that it really ought to be easier for Latin American learners to make more progress more quickly. Half of the 3,000 most common words in English, in spoken English, are cognates between Spanish, French and Portuguese. So if we help them a little more with pronunciation, if we allow them access to these words sooner, they can express a lot more language, their personalities and identities much more quickly. So when we talk about cognates, immediately teachers think of false cognates or false friends. But when you look carefully at what the false cognates relationship is, what you'll find is 98% of all cognates are friends. You just need some help with pronunciation and spelling. Only 2% are false cognates. What we've done in ID is we've included lots and lots of words which students can recognise immediately because of their mother tongue knowledge. And this rapidly accelerates learning, because what you'll see in all of the texts in ID is that they're full of words which you wouldn't normally teach at this level. The reason for this is because they're difficult for other nationalities. But when it comes to Latin Americans, they're relatively easy. And students can express much, much more once they learn to recognise these words. Furthermore, there are many suffixes which are common to English, Spanish and Portuguese. And once students begin to recognise them and learn the pronunciation patterns connected to those suffix patterns, they're able to rapidly expand their own vocabularies, as well as even creating words for themselves. Once students become aware of the pronunciation and stress pattern related to shun, for example, they can quickly apply this to words which you would not normally expect them to say. For example, things like situation, suggestion, nationalisation. The minute students are aware that they can start to create and speculate and generate words from their existing linguistic knowledge, remembering they're not empty vessels at all, they can quickly create hundreds of words for themselves, way above their expected level. At the back of the workbook, you'll find two further approaches to teaching vocabulary. One is a phrase book, which is unit by unit, but it's much bigger than that. The students eventually build a complete phrase book to revise the book that way. And we also have a traditional unit by unit word list for the more orthodox learner. In my experience, if you ask Latin American teachers, what are your students' biggest problems? They usually say pronunciation. Teachers have traditionally shied away from pronunciation, partly because they're not confident themselves, but mainly because they haven't been offered a systematic diet of pronunciation. Virtually every page of ID has an integrated pronunciation exercise, more than any other book I've ever seen. As soon as you open the book, what you'll see is the pink lettering jumping from the page, which is the word stress mark clearly on all polysyllabic words. So the students are encouraged to try to learn to pronounce the words for themselves. But once you actually establish a guessing route for them, they can begin to guess the words based upon what they can see on the page. And of course, because there are so many cognates between our languages, they suddenly find themselves pronouncing quite successfully words which you wouldn't imagine a low-level student to be able to use. If you look at the back of English ID, you'll see our pronunciation chart, which is a truly original feature. It has 2 rhyming words for each of the 16 vowel sounds in American English and the 20 consonants too. And it's the first chart, to my knowledge, which actually highlights which are the problematical sounds for Portuguese and Spanish speakers, allowing them to celebrate what's easy and focus their energy on what's more difficult. English ID truly is a communicative course in every sense. That's why if you look through the book, you'll notice there are no headings which say speaking, because we've managed to integrate speaking into every section, the reading sections, the grammar sections, and so on. How did we do this? If you look carefully, you'll see speech bubbles under each of the headings. These exemplify the types of exchange your students should be able to manage. What's more, every phase of every lesson within English ID ends with a section called Make It Personal, which is when students are challenged to say, express as much as they can with all the English resources they have to begin to feel and build and grow their English identity. The first thing you'll notice probably when you open a spread is there is a question syllabus. Each lesson begins with a question which the students will learn to answer during the class. The question syllabus is actually an incredibly interesting expression of syllabus, because if you give the book to students and they can ask and answer those questions all day long, you could use this for the basis of an oral evaluation, for example. And one of the schools now using the book in Brazil have actually adapted this idea, and they now use the question syllabus for their placement test, placing new students. You'll also notice many of the lessons have a feature called World of English, which is effectively me talking in relatively informal language to the students about language and how best to learn it. A nice regular feature is the cyberboxes, which introduce students to new language and innovations to English caused by the internet and digital technology. A truly unique feature of English ID is the songline, which you'll see at the top right on each of the lessons. And this provides a really memorable hook for the language of that lesson. Again, in my experience, listening is the hardest skill for language learners to get to grips with. It's the hardest one to practice, and it's the one which needs the most practice. English ID is very rich in listening, all of which is available for the students to listen to on the portal for themselves as many times as they like. So teachers don't actually have to keep doing the third and fourth listening in class. If you look at the reading texts in English ID, you'll find that they look slightly longer and richer and possibly even denser in terms of vocabulary compared with the traditional text at that level. And that's purely because we've been able to embrace all the cognates, so students get much richer reading input both in the student's book and in the work. ID offers an integrated process writing syllabus, but it really is process writing. We have a proper before, during and after stage marked clearly for the students with each piece of writing. One of the most popular features of ID is common mistakes. And our suggestion is that if you front your teaching with common mistakes, if you show students what to avoid from the beginning of the class, everybody, the stronger students and the weaker students, are equally well informed for the whole class to help each other, thus reducing, hopefully, the amount of errors your students will make. What we've done is we've included contrastive grammar without ever making reference to the mother tongue. The way we've done this is with the common mistakes. We show students what not to say as a result of immediate transfer from the mother tongue. So without using the mother tongue, we're actually facilitating contrastive grammar. So we have inductive grammar, deductive grammar, and the third approach, which is proven to be the most popular, which is contrastive grammar. This is showing students in the common mistake boxes what to avoid without ever requiring them to translate. And of course we have the ID virtual learning environment, which is the portal where the students can go and access all the audio, the ID cafe sequences, all kinds of informal learning opportunities, and of course more formal learning opportunities too for the teacher to monitor the students' progress with what they're doing online, at home, outside class. And we have a wonderful test studio too, which is basically there to supply all your testing needs. The real treat of writing English ID was being given the opportunity to write the first Latin American course book for adult learners, to really be given a chance to help the continent which I most love. By writing a course book which specifically embraces Latin American culture, their linguistic strengths, their linguistic skills, their linguistic needs, we've been able to produce a much more focused pedagogy, and we the team, all of us authors, believe that this ought to have a significant impact and shape a little, at least we hope, the future teaching of English in Latin America.